Glory. Bound for Glory took place in Tokyo this weekend, on Sunday. So let's just start off the conversation with what worked. What in your mind made this pay-per-view worth watching?
I think first and foremost it is just the wrestling. Hands down, this is some of the best wrestling that we've seen from a TNA product all year. I think, and that's down to the talent, both TNA and Wrestle One. They all worked their asses off. They did their best to put on a great show. I feel, um, and I think the novelty of it all was also a contributing factor, just due to the fact that it was in a different location, different country, and they were working for a different kind of audience, one that is receptive to the product, is paying attention to the product, wants to get involved in the product, and not just an audience that is half concerned with getting themselves over, and maybe they might pay attention to what's going on in the ring too.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Robert in the live chat saying, good ass wrestling, period. Enough said. I think for the most part, we both agree with that. We liked pretty much every match. There was not a bad match. And to see a crowd that was just so receptive and overly non-douchey was a nice change of speed. You didn't have the fans booing anything that was like what they thought was quote unquote boring, or there was no chance for the announcers. There was none of that. It was all really receptive, really positive stuff, and it totally gave us a different feel for this wrestling event. Nick, as far as matches go, what would you say was the match of the night for you?
It's honestly a really tough call. I've been thinking about it ever since the show happened, and I still don't have a clear-cut answer. Um, the obvious answer, I think, would be the X Division title match. Um, Samoa Joe is a very known quantity, and to a little lesser degree, Low Ki is as well. Obviously, there was a long period of time where he wasn't in the company. He only recently came back, but still, if you've watched a product for a while, you know who he is and what he does. The only unknown factor was Kaz Hayashi, and that's if you don't watch Wrestle One. But even so, with 2 out of 3 wrestlers being known quantities, they still put on a match that we haven't seen from them in a long time. The stuff we did see seemed to have a little bit of extra oomph to it, like almost like they cared a little bit more. And I think going back to the audience again, it's obvious the audience was very hot for Joe, for Low Ki, for Kaz to some degree or another. Kaz was playing a little bit of a heel in that match, but the crowd was obviously very into the match, and the wrestlers responded to that. The other contender I have personally was the opening match, Manic versus Minoru Tanaka, and that's that's mainly due to the fact that I've only recently really started paying attention to Japanese wrestling, uh, mainly New Japan, but basically if I can get an eyeball on it, I'll give it a shot and watch it. And this was just out of all the matches, I think this was the closest to a traditional Japanese wrestling match you would see today. A whole lot of emphasis on fighting spirit as opposed to what quote unquote makes sense, at least to an American audience. Like you had Tanaka kicking out of what would traditionally be used as finishers here, the Brain Buster, Manic's double underhook finish. Each time Tanaka's kicked out of that, and we'll get to the results in a minute, but to me, that's such a different way of wrestling than what I'm used to, and it's incredibly interesting to me.
Yeah,
So yeah,
and
between those two, it's definitely between those two for my favorite.
yeah, and not only that Nick, like you're saying, it was just like a different style. He was kicking out of what could be considered finishes, and what made that match even more special for me was that was your opener.
Hmm.
that was your introduction to what this event was going to be all about.
Yeah, absolutely, and it definitely set the tone, I think.
All right, so for me, my favorite match of the night, definitely the X Division. I love Low Key. I love his style, and I think it meshed so well with Kaz, and obviously his work with Samoa Joe is by far some of my favorite matches in TNA. And luckily for me, it's all been his recent stuff. Like the recent stuff between him and Joe has been phenomenal. So this was great. It was a 10-minute match. It didn't feel like 10 minutes. It felt like it should have gone on for a lot longer, but I was very, very pleased with it. My second match was definitely Manic versus Tanaka. I thought it was a great way to kick off the event. Those guys put in a lot of good work. And what made this match even more special for me, Manic. It is rare that we see Manic in a one-on-one match, let alone a one-on-one match that went 10 minutes. That was awesome.
Yeah, I can't agree more.
All right, so that's we basically talked about what worked. I'm going through the rest of the card right now in my head just to see anything else that popped out. I thought MVP versus Sakamoto was a good match as well. It was kind of odd in the sense that for months we've been hating MVP. We've been trained to boo MVP and not respect anything that he says or does since he's been in TNA. And this presentation was the exact opposite of that. He had that heartfelt, very face respectable and powerful promo before his match, and then just the idea that most of these matches were the same feel as far as you have a TNA heel out there, but the Japanese crowd was so into the TNA guys that it got the flip effect, and even Tenay and Taz would talk about that as far as while yes. We normally boo MVP. We have to cheer him because he's a TNA guy, and we are TNA.
Yeah, that was definitely a very, very good match. Both MVP and Sakamoto it exceeded my personal expectations for them. And you're absolutely right. It 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 is a little jarring to see that switch. Uh, MVP just being the unrepentant heel for months now in TNA. Yet when it comes to Japan, he is prototypical babyface almost. And I think that TNA did a good job of turning into the wind on that one because MVP's been a hit in Japan basically ever since he went there. Uh, he was New Japan's first ever Intercontinental Champion, and that's a much bigger deal in New Japan than it would be in the WWE. Uh, they actually do treat it as a prestigious title. So MVP is obviously going to get a loud pop, a loud face pop, and to try and have him quash that and still carry on the heel persona, I think that would have presented a very confusing situation for the audience, especially since Sakamoto turned out to be just a asshole clownish type heel. So yeah, that completely worked in my opinion.
Another good match, I thought, Ethan Carter versus Hama. So the foremost sumo wrestler. On paper, I was not looking forward to this match. I predicted Carter would lose just based on the size difference and how well respected and loved Hama is in Japan. So, but overall, despite these sort of awkwardness and the playfulness of this match, I really felt Ethan Carter pulled his own and really showed that he can make pretty much any match feel important.
Yeah, it was certainly a comedy match, first and foremost, or at least that was the effect. You had Hama doing the typical Fatman gimmicks that you would see in the WWE from Rikishi or somebody of that ilk. But yeah, like you mentioned, Hama is well loved by the fans, and I think EC3 played to that very well. I don't know what it is or why he was never seemingly able to do this in the WWE, but he almost has an innate understanding of what makes a crowd tick and what buttons to push in order to get the most heelish reaction out of any crowd. And now we know of any nationality. EC3 more and more is building himself as a top guy, and I can't wait until he's in the world title picture because that will just be a success story that TNA can crow about from the rooftops.
Yeah, as far as why we didn't know about what this guy could do before, limited window. He was given a limited window of opportunity, and that's what happens. Them's the breaks, I guess. But
Mm-hmm.
overall, he has shined, and we're going to talk a bit more in depth about EC3 a little bit later on in the conversation. But yeah, I thought this match on paper was going to be bad. It was going to be, obviously a comedy match, but to me, the way EC3 worked, it just felt important and it felt like a quality match. So, all right, so yeah, overall, a lot of good stuff. A lot of good stuff happened at Bound for Glory. It's being talked about in the live chat as far as, you know, no one really went into BFG, including me, really looking forward to it because there was a lot of unknowns and, a lot of low expectations because of that. And I think overall we can both agree that it exceeded expectations. It was a good pay-per-view and very good wrestling matches throughout. And overall, that's what's being talked about in the live chat. Again, we set expectations low, and we're very very happy with the outcome. However, there is some things we do need to talk about as far as what didn't work, what made this a bad pay-per-view for TNA. And let me start off with this, Nick. Blue in the live chat was saying, while we all agree that a lot of these wrestling matches were good, and overall we were very pleased with the type of matches that were put on by the Wrestle One guys. He's not sure how TNA benefits from those non-TNA guys having good matches.
Yeah, that is a valid concern. I think that's offset some by the fact that only one match didn't have TNA talent in it, and that was that tag match. Uh, I again, I think it's offset by the fact that you do have TNA talent in the rest of the matches. Manic versus Tanaka, the X Division title match, MVP versus Sakamoto. I think again, that's a very valid concern. It's just I don't think it's quite as bad as you might think on the surface.
Yeah, overall, I think I'm in agreement with you. I mean, Blue, you're right. It doesn't necessarily benefit TNA for the Wrestle One guys to be doing well, depending though on what happens next. There's been a lot of rumors that this partnership between Wrestle One and TNA is going to continue through 2015. So, while initially it doesn't look very beneficial, if these guys are going to make more appearances say after the beginning of the year, it's nice to have that kind of introduction to the TNA fans. Um, Lou in the live chat is questioning whether or not TNA dropped the ball by not promoting it more, and this is something that we've talked about for months. Ever since it was announced Bound for Glory was going to happen, especially with Bound for Glory going to be in Tokyo. There was pretty much little to no promotion up until this last week, where it seemed like they were really bringing it up on TV. So do you think that the event could have been better, or at least received better, if it was promoted more?
Under the circumstances, I don't know that it could have been better promoted. And that's largely due to the circumstances that TNA finds itself in. The uncertain future, at least as far as we're concerned, of whether TNA will have a TV channel going forward in 2015. From all accounts, Bound for Glory changed so much from, I'll say, from Slammiversary onward as to what it was going to be. It seemed like the location was set, Team 3D was going to be inducted, and for the longest time, those were the only concrete things we knew about. I think I would assume that the original plan was to have a world title match. I would assume that the original plan was to have as much of TNA's top talent involved as possible. Jeff Hardy, for instance, there was a lot of uncertainty as to whether he could make it or not. Of course, he has those drug charges still on his record, but there was a lot of rumor and speculation that maybe that wouldn't keep him out of Japan. Um, and again, the whole deal going on with Spike just screwed them massively as far as what they could do with the show. Um, I don't know if TNA was going to handle most of the production costs on their end in the beginning, but it wound up that Wrestle One was basically producing the show for them, and TNA was supplying the talent essentially. So, with those sort of always changing circumstances, yeah, the show obviously would have benefited from better promotion, but I don't necessarily know that that better promotion would have been possible.
Yeah, it definitely would have gotten more people interested in it. But as far as making the event better or the event feel more important, I don't think so, because of the circumstances. Like, is it Eddie Edwards that's has his leg broken or something like that?
Davey Richards broke
Davey
his leg.
Richards,
Yeah.
okay. So Davey Richards was hurt, and so there was no way for him to make that trip, which sucks, obviously, especially after what we saw in Impact this week. It would have been amazing to see him and the Wolves in general at that event. The same thing with, yeah, would have been cool to see Bobby Roode versus Bobby Lashley for the title in Tokyo, yeah. But at the same time, as obviously we're on Tuesday now. We're looking back at the event because of the event that we got. I don't think more promotion would have made a difference. I think for us who were going to tune in no matter what, I think we walked away mostly happy, and and the wrestling itself, like Robert is saying in the live chat, the wrestling was great. This was a good wrestling event. So I think, yeah, promotion would have made probably a little bit more people watch. It would make it feel a little bit more important. But as an event, it was a good event. It was a good event.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you and I, we sat down with David over at the Talk TNA podcast, talktnapodcast.com. If you check out his site, there's a Bound for Glory special where we both talked about an hour and a half on Bound for Glory. So if you want a little bit more of this type of conversation, check that out for sure. But in that conversation and in today, you and I pretty much did the same thing where we raved, for the most part, about the first half of the event, but we stayed pretty quiet about the rest of the event. So let's go into this now. I mean, as far as what made this a bad pay-per-view for me, was the Wrestle One only match. I think that's when I stopped. I think that's when my momentum as a fan kind of stopped, because here's four guys, while they did wrestle very well, I had no idea who any of them were. I didn't understand the characters. Pantera yelling what Taz said was obscenities, but then you said it was just a phrase that meant idiot a few times, kind of threw me off. Uh, I don't know. That match is when I stopped caring as much about this pay per view, and as as a fan watching, it seemed like TNA stopped caring as much after this match as well. Do you agree with that point of view?
I, yes and no. Um, Me personally, I didn't become less invested during the second half, but the momentum definitely seemed to stall. Um, Not necessarily with the Wrestle One tag match, but with the Hardcore Legends match, Team 3D versus Tommy Dreamer and Abyss. I think that's where things really hit a low point in terms of the event. I can definitely see where you're coming from with not knowing who the guys are, not knowing their characters or whatnot. Me personally, I don't mind that as much. Um, Again, I've recently gotten more into Japanese wrestling, and I think I'm in a stage where I'm a lot more accepting of what I don't know. I guess maybe once I get used to it and start learning more about it, maybe I'll start leaning more the other way. But yeah, I tended to enjoy this match. I liked how over the top Jiro was with the hair flips and the adjusting the jacket and all of that. I liked Pantera's antics. Um, when you bring up Baka, Japanese a language where your tone matters a lot. I've heard a lot of interpretations for the word Baka. Um, it ranges from just stupid to idiot to what Taz mentioned as obscenities. So
It was just
you
so
could,
loud and just
yeah, he
me.
just kept yelling that again and again. But yeah, again, I enjoyed that tag match. It was when you got to Team 3D and Dreamer and Abyss is where things hit a low point for me. I think they did a good job of building back up, but yeah, again, yes and no on the second half being worse than the first half. If only because the first half set such a high bar.
Yeah, it definitely felt like the first half was really built to be fast paced and solid. Overall, because after that tag match, we got Team Three versus Tommy Dreamer and Abyss, and that was slow and more of like the hardcore style. So not really technical, obviously not really fast paced. So a different type of match. Then we got Havoc and Velvet Sky, which was a probably, and I mean this as positive as possible. This was probably the best match I've ever seen from Velvet Sky. Take that
It,
for what you will.
yeah, it was almost certainly the best received match Velvet
Yeah,
Sky's ever had.
that too. That too. And then the main event, which was what I was hoping for the main event to be. That seemed to be how the story was being told. Tajiri Great Muda versus James Storm Great Sonata. That match really was felt slow paced as well, and I think it's just a matter of you just have a few different styles here. You've got Great Muda and Tajiri who are comparatively slow compared to Sonata, and then you've got James Storm, who's never really fit that type of wrestling style either. So uh, I don't know. To me, those three matches back to back to back felt awkwardly booked. I would have much rather had the X Division Championship near the end, uh, or even that Wrestle One tag match somewhere to fill the gap. But it just seemed like everything slowed down.
Yeah, honestly, I would have expected the tag match to lead off because that seems, from what I've gathered, that seems to be a trend in Japanese wrestling where you kick off with the young boys or the rookies, and then you lead up to the more established characters. And they kind of sort of took that build with Muda and Tajiri capping things off. But yeah, I personally probably would have booked the order a little differently, but yeah, it is what it is.
Okay. The only other negative I want to bring up about Bound for Glory is the fact that, to me, what what kind of hurt it was just the fact that there was no major storyline consistency. So you have MVP basically playing up as a face when we know he's not. You have uh, you have the whole really weird relationship between Tommy Dreamer and the Dudleys. Like here they are, best friends. They played up this the whole Hall of Fame presentation where they're best friends, they're buddy buddy, and then they have this match on Sunday, and it just felt like really out of place, especially because the promo before that was so positive about how much they're friends and how important they've been to each other's careers. So it just kind of felt, um, it just felt off. It felt non-realistic.
Yeah, the I guess the lack of storyline probably would throw some people. The only storylines that really seemed to continue from anywhere were EC3 and then James Storm's Revolution. That whole bit. I didn't take issue with Dreamer in 3D. I read that more as Dreamer's attitude being, hey, I respect you. When we get in that ring, I'm going to beat the shit out of you. Friendship kind of leaves the equation once you step between the ropes is how I took it.
Sure.
And Abyss, he just doesn't give a shit. So Dreamer can't really abandon his partner on that score. So
Yeah, I don't know. It was just weird because if you look at how Tommy Dreamer has been used on TV for the last month or two, it this match didn't make sense. But
hmm.
overall, let's give this pay-per-view a general score. Do you think this pay-per-view was good?
Yes, absolutely. It's probably my favorite pay per view of the year, personally.
Okay. I also thought it was a good pay-per-view. Whether or not it helps TNA, I'm not sure. But I think overall, as a wrestling fan, as a TNA fan, it was nice to see. It was nice to see this event, and hopefully it means something moving forward. Hopefully this is just the beginning of this relationship that we've been hearing rumors about. This is the beginning of that, and hopefully it develops into a really cool relationship.
Absolutely, I cannot agree more.
All right, and let's do our pay-per-view picks. Last week we did pick this on FTW 235. Let's start from the bottom. I only had two correct picks. uh, that is disappointing, but it is what it is. Nick, you had five correct picks, and Joe, who, if you haven't heard last week's episode, if you don't want to listen to the whole thing yet, just go back and listen to him introduce this card. Him reading all the Japanese names on the card, probably the best moment of the year for us. Hilarious. But Joe got six picks. So that takes us to Joe with 40 correct picks. I've got 48, and Nick, now you are on top with 52 picks.
Yes, sir.
TW Podcast.